The sun dipped low behind the acacia trees, casting long golden shadows across the village. Children laughed as they chased each other through dusty paths. Fires crackled as women prepared the evening meals. And in a small mud brick house, Zoe sat by the window, a worn textbook in her hands, her mind full of dreams. Her mother, Mama Aking, watched her proudly. "One day, Zoe," she said, her voice soft with hope, "you will be the first nurse from our family. You will wear your uniform, and the whole village will celebrate you." Zoe smiled shyly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I will, Mama. I promise." Every night, Zoe studied under the flickering light of an old kerosene lamp. Every morning, she walked miles to the only school for girls. She dreamed of clinics with clean white walls, of healing the sick, of lifting her family out of poverty. Her future was a star she could almost touch. The wedding was the biggest event the village had seen in years. Drums beat loud into the night. Goats were roasted over open fires. The air smelled of spices and celebration. It was there, under a sky bursting with stars, that Zoe met Kwame. He leaned casually against a borrowed car, city clothes sharp against the roughness of the village. He smiled at Zoe, a smile so confident, so knowing, it made her heart stumble. "You must be the famous scholar," Kwame said, his voice smooth as silk. "Everyone here talks about you." Zoe laughed nervously. No boy had ever looked at her like that, like she was not just a girl, but a woman. A woman with dreams and desires. He told her stories of the city, of neon lights, endless possibilities, of a life without dust and duty. A place where dreams weren't just dreamed, but lived. Zoe listened, wide-eyed. The city felt like magic, and Kwame seemed like its key. Before the night ended, he whispered into her ear. "Come with me. I'll make you a queen." At first, Zoe resisted. She clutched onto her family's hopes, her own ambitions. But the days that followed were heavy with temptation. Kwame sent her small gifts, a scarf from the market, cheap perfumes that smelled like forbidden gardens. He spoke of renting a small place for her in the city, close to a nursing college. He promised marriage. He promised forever. And Zoe, young, lonely, desperate to escape the weight of expectations, finally said yes. One night, while the village slept, she packed her few belongings into a cloth bag and slipped into Kwame's waiting arms. As they drove away, Zoe looked back only once. At the fading lights of her home. At the mother who would wake up to heartbreak. At the future she was leaving behind. She told herself it was just for a while. She told herself she would return stronger, more successful. She told herself she was chasing her dreams. But in truth, she was already lost. The city wasn't golden. It was grey, grimy, and unforgiving. Kwame's promises melted away faster than morning mist. The apartment was a tiny room in a crumbling building, walls stained with mold, air thick with smoke and sorrow. There was no nursing school. No job. No fairy tale. Within weeks, Kwame grew distant. He stopped calling her beautiful. Stopped bringing gifts. Stopped pretending. Zoe confronted him once, voice trembling with fear and anger. "You said you would help me study," she cried. "You said you loved me." Kwame laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Love," he sneered. "You were just something to pass time with, village girl. Go back to your goats and mud huts." He slammed the door behind him. And just like that, Zoe was alone. No money. No family. No future. And soon, she discovered. New life grew inside her. Zoe stood in the cramped room, a hand pressed against her belly, feeling the faint, fluttering heartbeat of the child she carried. Her heart twisted between joy and terror. A child. Her child. A piece of her that no one could steal. But how would she survive? She thought about going home, about falling at her mother's feet, begging forgiveness. But shame was a heavier chain than poverty. What would they say? The nurse who never even made it to school. The daughter who brought disgrace. The girl who let a city boy ruin her. No. She would stay. She would fight. She would find a way. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into cruel, endless months. Zoe wandered the city like a ghost. She learned to survive on the leftovers of strangers, to beg without pride, to sleep with one eye open under trembling streetlights. The city was merciless. Sometimes men shouted at her from passing cars, offering money for things she could not bear to imagine. Sometimes women hissed at her, clutching their handbags closer, as if her poverty might stain them. Every morning she woke, she thanked whatever God might still be listening. Thanked him that Jabari, the small life growing inside her, had survived another day. But as her belly grew, her strength faded. The hunger gnawed at her bones. The cold seeped into her blood. Loneliness wrapped around her throat like a noose. Still, she pressed on. One foot. Then another. Because she was not walking for herself anymore, she was walking for him. One night, when the rain was heavy and cruel, Zoe found herself drawn to an old bridge at the edge of the city. Beneath its crumbling archways, huddled in corners and broken cardboard shelters, were the forgotten men and women discarded by the world. She hesitated. Then a voice called out. "Come, child. The rain doesn't care if you're proud." An old woman, her face lined with 1,000 forgotten sorrows, beckoned her closer. This was Marembe. Under the bridge, there was no judgment. No shame. Only the broken helping the broken. Zoe shared what little she had, a dry corner, a thin blanket, a whispered prayer for better days. And for the first time in months, she slept without fear. The bridge, ugly and forgotten by the city, became her sanctuary. It was where she laughed again, faintly. Where she found fragments of family among the lost souls. Where, against all odds, hope flickered to life. The night Jabari came into the world was a night of storms. Thunder cracked open the heavens. The bridge shook with the fury of the sky. Zoe doubled over in pain, her cries swallowed by the roar of the rain. Marembe rushed to her side, her old hands steady. The others gathered, shielding her with tattered umbrellas, offering whispered encouragement. The labor was long. Each contraction tore through her like fire. The pain was so great, Zoe thought she might die there, another forgotten story under a forgotten bridge. But then, a scream louder than the storm. Jabari. Her son. Her warrior. Marembe placed the tiny, wriggling bundle into Zoe's trembling arms. Tears blurred Zoe's vision as she kissed his damp forehead. "You are my heart," she whispered. "You are my strength." In that moment, despite the hunger, the cold, the despair, Zoe felt rich beyond measure. Motherhood on the streets was another war. Zoe scavenged during the day, cradled Jabari during the cold nights. She grew thinner, hungrier, more desperate. Sometimes she watched rich families through cafe windows, their children laughing with mouths full of food. If only, she thought, bitterness burning in her chest, if only life was kinder. Jabari grew weaker with each passing day. The milk she could afford wasn't enough. The tiny coughs that wrecked his body at night tore at her soul. She begged harder, worked longer, prayed louder. But nothing seemed enough. One evening, when Jabari's cries grew hoarse and faint, Zoe realized something. Love was not enough to keep him alive. She needed a miracle. Or she needed to make the ultimate sacrifice. It was then she met Ebony and Kojo, a young, wealthy couple distributing food at the shelters. They were kind. Too kind. They noticed Jabari, cooed over him, fed him sweet mashed bananas from golden spoons. "You're too young to suffer like this," Ebony said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "Let us help. We can give him a real home. Food. Medicine. A future." At first, Zoe recoiled. Jabari was her life. Her only light in the darkness. But every cough, every whimper of hunger, weakened her defenses. Maybe this was the answer. Maybe letting go was love. They promised she could visit anytime. Promised she would still be Jabari's mother in every way that mattered. Zoe wept for 3 nights before agreeing. She convinced herself she was doing the right thing. For him. Always for him. The day Zoe handed Jabari over was a day the sun forgot to shine. The sky hung heavy with grey clouds, as if even heaven mourned with her. At the foot of the bridge, Ebony and Kojo waited beside their gleaming car, doors open like the gates of some distant paradise. Zoe kissed Jabari's forehead one last time. His tiny fingers clutched at her tattered shawl, refusing to let go. Her heart shattered. "Be strong, my little lion," she whispered into his soft curls. "Mama will see you soon." Ebony smiled warmly, cradling Jabari with practiced hands. "You can visit him anytime, Zoe," she promised, voice sweet as honey. "He will never forget you." Zoe watched, hollow-eyed, as the car disappeared into the maze of the city. The hole Jabari left in her arms was cold, vast, unbearable. But she told herself. This pain was love. This sacrifice was salvation. She believed she had done the right thing. Days passed. Then weeks. Zoe waited under the bridge, heart pounding at every approaching car, every unfamiliar figure. But Ebony and Kojo never returned. She asked the other street people, the shelter volunteers. No one had seen them. No one knew where they lived. The number they gave her. Disconnected. The promises they made. Dust on the wind. Panic clawed at Zoe's chest. She wandered the city for days, searching faces, knocking on doors, pleading for help. "Have you seen them?" she cried, showing a worn, crumpled photo of Jabari. But the city was deaf to her pain. Hope rotted into dread. One evening, while Zoe searched near the markets, she overheard 2 women talking. Another one sold, one whispered, shaking her head. Poor girl thought she was giving her baby to a rich family. Turns out they're part of a trafficking ring. Zoe's blood ran cold. She stumbled toward them, voice breaking. What did you say?" The woman looked at her with pity. "The police know," one said. "But those people. They're powerful. The babies just disappear." Disappear. The word echoed inside her skull like a scream. Zoe collapsed to her knees in the mud, wailing a sound so raw, so broken, that the whole street seemed to pause. Jabari wasn't safe. Jabari wasn't home. Jabari was gone. And it was her fault. Grief could have drowned her. Many would have let it. But in Zoe, grief turned to something else. Something sharper. Rage. She rose from the mud like a wounded lioness. She would find them. She would fight the entire world if she had to. For Jabari. She found a group of women at the shelter, strong women who had lost their own children to the city's cruel underbelly. Women who believed her, who saw the fire in her eyes. They taught her where to look. Which corrupt offices to avoid, which crooked charities to expose, which whispers in dark alleys might lead to truth. Zoe worked day and night, a blade of desperation honed to deadly sharpness. And slowly, painfully, she pieced together the truth. Ebony and Kojo were not the saviors they pretended to be. They were sellers of dreams, and destroyers of souls. The final confrontation wasn't in some courtroom or fancy office. It was in a rundown building at the edge of the slums, where Zoe, with the help of a journalist and a few brave allies, cornered them. They tried to run. But Zoe was faster. Fiercer. "Where is my son?" she roared, her voice shaking the broken windows. Police sirens howled in the distance. Real police, this time, the ones the journalist had called, ones not yet bought by blood money. Ebony wept fake tears. Kojo cursed and threatened. But the evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses. Hidden cameras. The cries of other stolen children. They were dragged away in chains. Justice, jagged and imperfect, finally breathed life into Zoe's broken soul. Weeks later, in a clean, warm government shelter, a nurse led Zoe into a quiet room. And there, in a little crib lined with yellow blankets, lay Jabari. Alive. Thin. But alive. When he saw her, his tiny face lit up. His arms flailed wildly, reaching for her. Zoe fell to her knees, sobbing as she cradled him against her chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered over and over. "I'm here now. Mama's here. I will never leave you again." Jabari gurgled and pressed his face against her heart. Home. At last. It wasn't easy after that. Zoe worked hard, cleaning houses by day, studying at night. Slowly, she built a real life for herself and Jabari. She finished her nursing studies years later, not for glory this time, but for every mother who had been broken by false promises. For every child whose cries had gone unheard. On the day she graduated, dressed in crisp white, she carried Jabari on her hip. As the crowd cheered, she whispered into his ear. "You and me, my lion. Against the world." And this time, the future was truly theirs. Together.